In two messages to the chairman of the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General, the Foreign and Expatriates Ministry says the presidential elections were conducted in an atmosphere of democracy and transparency with a high turnout at the ballot boxes. A terrorist blast is reported in Homs, and the Syrian Arab Army units continue their operations in Latakia and Aleppo. The Iraqi army takes full control of Tikrit and al-Quds and al-Tahrir neighborhoods in al-Mosul. Syria condemns the terrorist attacks in Iraq, stressing support for Iraq's government, army and people in combating terrorism. In implementation of Legislative Decree No. 22 for the year 2014, which stipulates granting general amnesty for the crimes committed before the 9th of June 2014, hundreds of prisoners were released from Aleppo and Damascus central prisons. Iran renews its stand in support of Syria against terrorism, calling for a political solution to the crisis. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our news for today. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry has addressed two messages to the chairman of the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General on the presidential elections in Syria, pointing out that they were conducted in an atmosphere of democracy and transparency with a high turnout that surpassed all expectation. The elections, the ministry said, have foiled all allegations made by some states against them and undermined the concept that the elections would represent an obstacle in the way of reaching a peaceful solution to the crisis in Syria. The messages called on the international community to respect the will of the Syrian people in choosing their leadership and deciding their own present and future, stressing the need for the world community to stand by the side of the Syrian people in combating terrorism. President Bashar al-Assad today received two cables of congratulation from the President of the Myanmar Federation, Thein Sein, and the acting President of the Republic of Abkhazia, Valery Gamba, on the occasion of His Excellency's victory in the presidential elections. President Thein Sein expressed in the cable his confidence that the friendship and cooperation relations between the two countries would be enhanced in the interest of both peoples in the upcoming years. On his part, Abkhazia acting President Valery Gamba expressed his confidence that the election of President al-Assad for a new constitutional term in office will enhance peace inside Syria and its position at the international level. He expressed his interest in establishing friendship and cooperation relations between the two countries. President Bashar al-Assad also received cables of congratulation from the Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of Donetsk and from international and Arab parties, commissions and figures on the occasion of his victory in the presidential elections. The cables affirmed that the big support expressed to President al-Assad by the Syrian voters from various factions confirmed that the Syrians actually voted for the policy of heroic struggle against international terrorism and those collaborating with it for the sake of safeguarding Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In Homs, a booby-trapped car explosion near the square of the policeman housing complex in Wadi Dhahab neighborhood has so far claimed the lives of 7 citizens and injured 25, including women and children. The Foreign and Expatriates Ministry has expressed Syria's condemnation of the terrorist acts Iraq has been exposed to within the framework of what the ministry said a world conspiracy against the Iraqi and Syrian peoples represented in a terrorist invasion that targets the Iraqi people's unity and the country's infrastructure. In a statement, the ministry voiced Syria's support for the Iraqi government, army and people in their confrontation of the terrorists, affirming that Iraq is facing the same foreign sides-supported terrorism terrorism that Syria is facing, emphasizing its determination to fight the terrorism against it and to continue defending the Syrian people. Syria, the statement added, reiterates its full solidarity with Iraq and its readiness to cooperate with it to confront terrorism. At the conclusion of its statement, the ministry said Syria calls on the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General to issue clear decisions that condemn such terrorist acts and to adopt immediate measures against the countries that support and sponsor such terrorist groups and to question them and compel them to halt their financial and military support to them, which threatens international peace and security in the region and the world. The Islamic State in Iraq and Levant organization had yesterday taken control of the cities of Nineveh and Mosul, causing the deportation of a large number of Iraqi families. The organization also took control of al-Ahwaj province and 5 other districts in Kirkuk Governorate, triggering a state of utmost alert that was declared by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, who also called on Parliament to announce a state of emergency in the country. Deep concern over the situation has meanwhile been expressed by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Welcome back. In the governorates of Nineveh, Salah ad-Din and Kirkuk, Iraqi troops continue their strikes against the terrorists of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, taking full control of Tikrit and the neighborhoods of Al-Quds and Al-Tahrir in the city of Al-Mosul. A state of high alert has been declared by the Iraqi clans to defend the country's stability and security against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant terrorists. The International Immigration Organization in Iraq has affirmed that more than 500,000 civilians have immigrated from Al-Mosul and the areas surrounding it following the battles that erupted a few days ago and in the wake of the criminal acts perpetrated by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant elements against the unarmed civilians. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has condemned the terrorist attacks launched by the so-called the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant on Al-Mosul and Tikrit, expressing extreme concern over hundreds of thousands of displaced citizens who had to immigrate from Al-Mosul. In the meantime, the Iraqi Defense Ministry describes what happened in Al-Mosul and Tikrit as a Turkish Gulf plan supported by the West to destroy Iraq's stability and territorial integrity. Iraqi warplanes shelled terrorist gatherings in Al-Mosul and Tikrit, destroying a convoy consisting of hundreds of cars heading to Baghdad. In implementation of Legislative Decree No. 22 for the year 2014, which allows for granting a general amnesty on crimes committed before the 9th of June 2014, 274 prisoners were released from Damascus Central Prison as a first batch. In implementation of Legislative Decree No. 22 for the year 2014, which stipulates granting general amnesty for the crimes committed before the 9th of June 2014, the first batch of prisoners was released from Aleppo Central Prison. Aleppo First Attorney General Ibrahim Hilal confirmed that 300 prisoners were released from Aleppo Central Prison, adding that the decision has been made by 2 judicial committees which closely reviewed the files of the prisoners according to the directives of President Bashar al-Assad. In Aleppo, units of the Syrian Arab Army foiled an infiltration attempt by terrorists into an orphanage in Al-Ramoun and Al-Zahra charity, killing and wounding dozens of terrorists and destroyed an armed vehicle used by them. Syrian Arab Army units also confronted a terrorist attack by armed gunmen in the village of Aziza and the surroundings of the Air Defense Battalion in Azzan, inflicting heavy losses upon them. Units of the Syrian Arab Army targeted terrorist gatherings in Aquaris, Mara, Al-Awaj, Al-Muslimiyya and the Old City in Aleppo, destroying a weapon warehouse full of explosive devices and ammunition in Karm Miyassar, in addition to destroying a number of cars in Khan al-Asal, Ard al-Na'na'i and Daret Azza, killing and wounding scores of terrorists. In Daraa, units of the Syrian Arab Army killed and wounded a number of terrorists who are affiliated with the so-called Nahal Battalion in Saida town in Daraa countryside. Syrian Arab Army units also targeted terrorist gatherings east of Zanubia school in the refugees camp in Daraa al-Balad, killing dozens and destroying their criminal equipment. Syrian Arab Army units continued their operation in al-Mleha town in Damascus countryside to cut off all supply routes to the terrorists. The most important is Jisrin al-Mleha road, which has fallen under the control of the Syrian Arab Army. In Aleppo, a unit of the Syrian Arab Army foiled an attempt by armed terrorists to break into the orphanage house in Al-Zahra using a booby-trapped armored vehicle, inflicting heavy losses on them. In another development, the terrorist groups tried to infiltrate into some military positions in the area, that units of the Syrian Arab Army intercepted them and foiled their attempts. In Latakia northern countryside, the Syrian Arab Army took full control of 3 hills in Slumfe, killing a number of terrorists and destroying their criminal equipment. These hills are considered very important in the military strategic sense because they overlook a number of villages in Latakia northern countryside. The Iranian Foreign Ministry has reiterated Tehran's support for the Iraqi government and people in their confrontation of terrorism, calling for safeguarding the unity of the Iraqi people with all their factions. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mardia Afkham has warned against the repercussions of some states' support for the terrorist groups who contribute to instability in the region, voicing hope security and stability would restore to Iraq. On his part, Iranian Assistant Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs Hussein Amir Abdullahian has affirmed Iran's support for Iraq in its battle against terrorism, voicing confidence that the Iraqi armed forces would eliminate the terrorists and takfiris across Iraq. Finally, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed the necessity of stopping military operations launched by Kiev authorities southeast of Ukraine and starting a dialogue among all parties. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that Lavrov, during a telephone conversation with his American counterpart John Kerry, pointed out that the government in Kiev should stop all military action and deal with humanitarian issues, in addition to conducting a national dialogue for determining the future of the Ukraine. Earlier, Mr. Lavrov held a press conference in St. Petersburg with his German counterpart Frank-Walter Steinmeier and the Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski, during which he stressed that Russia, Poland and Germany call for an immediate halt of violence in the Ukraine without any preconditions. Iranian Foreign Ministry renewed its support for Syria in the war against terrorism and its stance that encourages a political solution to resolve the crisis. In a weekly press conference, Iran's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mardia Afkham asserted Iran's clear stance towards that development of the situation in Syria, emphasizing that the irresponsible support provided by some countries to the armed terrorist groups in Syria has led to the spread of terrorism in the region. Afkham stressed the need for consultation between the Islamic states, who are members of the Islamic Cooperation Organization, in order to find a solution to the problem of terrorism which has plagued the countries in the region, pointing out that Iran has warned against the risk of supporting the terrorist groups, especially as terrorism has no specific or limited place. Finally, in a telephone call with the UN Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator Valerie Amos, Iranian Assistant Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs Hassan Amir Abdullahian discussed the issue of providing humanitarian assistance to Syria and the necessity of coordination in this respect. Iranian media sources said the telephone call came ahead of the visits scheduled to be paid by Amos to Tehran, with the aim of holding more consultations to coordinate between the two sides in the field of delivering humanitarian assistance to Syria. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region, and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Vani Gunjan, but after a short break.